What if the biggest mistake you've ever carried wasn't personal at all, but a trick planted into every mind for thousands of years? The trick that told you you are just human. Small, fragile, born by chance, dying by certainty. But pause for a moment. Does that story feel whole to you? Or is there a quiet unease, a sense that something vital is missing? From the very beginning, almost everything you were taught reinforced one idea, that you are separate. Separate from other people, from nature, and most of all, from God or Source. Religions placed the divine somewhere far away. Governments built their authority on fear. Science explained you as a set of electrical impulses. Culture wrapped it all into a survival story, you against the world. And yet, deep inside, a whisper remains. A quiet recognition, what if I'm not separate at all? Joel Goldsmith, the mystic who described this deception as the primordial error, pointed to something radical. There was never a you trying to reach a God. There has always only been one presence, one life, one consciousness appearing in infinite forms. Think of glass. Melt it into a cup, a jar, or a window. The shapes differ, but the substance remains the same. No one argues the glass is divided into pieces. It is still one essence. Consciousness is just like that. The form you call me or you is just shape. The substance is the same living reality. This is not an abstract idea. It changes everything. Because if separation is the core illusion, then all suffering, disease, fear, loneliness, even death, is built on a false foundation. It is not the essence of reality, only a distorted appearance. Like train tracks that seem to meet on the horizon, but never truly do. And here lies the paradox. Perfection is not something promised in the future. It is already here, now. But this simple fact is so disruptive that the entire machinery of society depends on keeping it hidden. If you recognize this, then who would need a priest to pray on your behalf? Who would need a government to frighten you into obedience? Who would chase wealth out of fear of scarcity? The illusion must remain standing, because if it falls, the systems built on it collapse too. Why we believe the lie? Why did humanity accept such a distortion? Part of the answer is fear. A mind that feels separate must protect itself. It clings to survival, builds walls, and bargains with gods and institutions. The story of distance created a world where control and authority seemed necessary. History shows this clearly. Ancient religions placed God outside, in a heaven guarded by laws and rituals. Philosophy, from Plato onward, divided reality into two realms, a perfect world of ideas and a flawed world of matter. Later, modern science carried the split forward by insisting life is nothing more than mechanical parts. Each step deepened the illusion of distance. But the cost was heavy. Life became an endless attempt to reach something never truly absent. People prayed, worked, and fought for salvation, progress, or security, but the horizon always receded. The search never ended because it was based on an error. You cannot arrive at what you already are. This is why, even with all of humanity's progress, something feels hollow. Despite advances in medicine, technology, and psychology, people remain anxious, restless, and afraid. Because no matter how much we achieve on the outside, the inside is built on the wrong assumption that we are separate beings struggling to reunite with God, with wholeness, with perfection. The mask and the face. Here's the shock. The human identity you carry is not your essence. It is a mask. Beneath it lies the face of reality itself, indivisible, eternal, unbreakable. You've always been taught you are human who may one day touch the divine. But Goldsmith reversed it completely. You are divine life that appears in human form. When Jesus said, "I and the Father are one," it was never meant to be taken as an exception. He was not claiming privilege, but revealing principle. The oneness he lived was not personal, but universal. To turn that statement into exclusivity, "only he is one with God," was the error that locked generations into separation and kept the illusion alive. This illusion shapes how you see healing. We treat illness as a flaw to fix. But if reality is perfect, then what appears as disease is no more than a false reading, like a mirage that vanishes once recognized. True healing is not changing the body, but seeing through the mistaken image. Perfection was always present. The same illusion shapes prayer. People beg and plead with a distant God, hoping for favors. But if God is appearing as your very consciousness, then prayer is not asking, it is silence. It is recognition of what is already here. Prayer becomes listening, not requesting. Even time itself loses its tyranny. Almost all spiritual search is built on one day. One day I'll be healed. One day I'll be enlightened. One day I'll be free. But truth cannot exist in the future. It is always now. I am is the only verb reality knows. The silent conspiracy. So why doesn't the world teach this openly? Because the illusion is too useful. Religion thrives by offering a bridge to a distant God. Governments thrive by using fear of survival. Economies thrive by convincing you that something is lacking and must be bought. Even spiritual industries thrive on promising future enlightenment. All of it rests on the same lie, that you are incomplete. The moment you see through it, their control begins to dissolve. You no longer need to purchase salvation, protection, or self-worth. You begin to live from fullness instead of lack. That is why this teaching feels dangerous. It not only questions personal beliefs, but threatens entire civilizations. The first step, recognition. But here's the relief. Dismantling this illusion doesn't require years of discipline or complex rituals. The first step is simple, recognition. To recognize that the you listening right now is not a small, fragile creature, but the very consciousness of God appearing as an individual. To recognize that what breathes through your lungs is not mechanical biology, but life itself, unchanging, infinite, whole. Recognition doesn't mean repeating a belief. It is not chanting, "I am divine," as if words could convince. It is a quiet noticing, a turning of attention inward to see what has always been true. The moment you touch this, even briefly, you feel a shift. Fear softens. Anxiety loosens. Life no longer feels like a desperate chase, but a living presence. And yet, recognition alone is not enough. The old conditioning is heavy. Centuries of thought patterns still whisper separation. That's why practice is needed, not to create something new, but to sustain clarity against the fog of the old narrative. Meditation becomes the natural path, but not meditation as technique or achievement. Meditation here is the gentle act of stopping, sitting in silence, noticing what remains when thoughts of lack and distance fade. The presence you meet there is not new, it is what has always been. A practical invitation. So, how do you begin shifting from the illusion of separation to the recognition of unity? Start small. Take moments during your day to pause. Instead of racing to fix or achieve, simply ask, who is it that is experiencing this moment? Don't answer with your name, your body, or your story. Stay with the awareness itself. The one noticing is not apart from life. It is life. When you feel fear, notice what is actually happening. Fear is not proof of separation. It is only thought arising within the same awareness. the background presence remains untouched. When you pray, instead of asking, listen. Let silence replace words. Notice the stillness that holds you. That stillness is not absence, it is fullness. And when you look at your body, see it as glass shaped into temporary form. It may change, age, or feel pain, but its essence is the same as the life that animates everything. This is the beginning of the journey, not forward into the future, but inward into what already is. The illusion of separation has shaped culture, religion, and science, but it does not need to shape you. You are not a seeker chasing after God. You are God appearing as the seeker. The mask has been mistaken for the face, but the face was never lost. The question that remains is simple yet radical. If perfection is already present, then who is it that suffers? Hold that question in your heart as you move through the day. Don't rush to answer it. Let it dissolve layers of belief. And as it dissolves, notice what remains, still, alive, whole. Because what you are has never been born, and it will never die. The roots of the illusion. If the truth of oneness is so simple, why has humanity struggled for millennia to see it? Why do entire civilizations still move as if the separation were real? The answer is layered. Separation was not just taught, it became woven into the very language, institutions, and worldview of humanity. To break through it, we must see how the illusion was constructed. Only then can its grip begin to loosen. From the earliest stories, the divine was cast outside of human life. In ancient Judaism, the presence of God was hidden behind laws and rituals, guarded by priests. In Christianity, the message of Jesus, that the Father and I are one, was turned into something exclusive. Instead of a universal truth, it became the privilege of a single figure. Islam, with its emphasis on submission, deepened the sense of distance by presenting God as absolute ruler and humanity as fragile subjects. Even outside religion, philosophy carried the split forward. Plato drew a line between the perfect world of ideas and the flawed material world. Augustine and Aquinas kept the duality alive through centuries of Christian thought. Later, Descartes sharpened it by dividing mind and body, laying the foundation for modern science to treat human beings as machines. Each system spoke in different terms, but the effect was the same: to convince humanity that life is a journey of approximation. God was somewhere else, perfection was somewhere else, wholeness was always beyond the horizon, and so the race began, a race that could never be won. This is the silent conspiracy, not because people gathered in secret to plan it, but because countless voices repeated the same illusion until it became unquestioned reality. The Eastern contrast. Yet the East whispered something different. Vedanta in India proclaimed, Atman is Brahman. The soul is not separate from the Absolute. Buddhism, particularly Mahayana, revealed the emptiness of the self, dissolving the idea of separation. Taoism insisted on harmony, not as an achievement, but as the natural flow of life. But even here, simplicity became obscured. Over time, practices multiplied. Rituals layered themselves over the original truth, and spiritual hierarchies emerged. What began as a direct recognition of unity became systems of discipline, temples of authority, and once again, distance. Joel Goldsmith stood out because he stripped it all back. No dogma, no ritual, no guru. He spoke of the infinite way not as a religion, but as a direct experience available to anyone, anywhere, without intermediaries. Two core principles. Goldsmith's teaching rests on two simple but radical points. The illusion of separation. The world you see as divided is only a false interpretation. The eternal presence. Divine perfection is not a goal, but the only condition that already exists. These two together dismantle the entire architecture of culture. They dissolve the authority of systems that feed on fear. They question progress itself, not as practical development, but as the belief that life must always be improved to become whole. Think about this. Entire civilizations rise and fall on the idea of fixing the world. New inventions, medical breakthroughs, political reforms, all valuable in their own way, but none capable of touching the essence of reality. Why? Because reality was never broken. Healing as recognition. This becomes clearer in the way we view healing. The common belief is that healing is a process. An illness appears, and we must correct it. But in the infinite way, the problem itself is seen as illusion. The body is not flawed. Consciousness is not damaged. What needs healing is not life, but perception. Healing happens the moment the false image dissolves. It is not a gradual process of fixing, but an instant recognition of wholeness. This explains why sometimes people experience what is called instantaneous healing. It is not a miracle from outside. It is the disappearance of the mistaken perception. This does not deny that symptoms appear. Pain may be felt. But pain has no substance. It exists only as interpretation. Just as a mirage looks like water but cannot quench thirst, illness appears real but has no lasting essence. Prayer transformed. The same shift occurs in prayer. For centuries, prayer meant pleading with a distant God. But if God is already appearing as the consciousness that prays, then what is there to beg for? Prayer becomes silence. Not words, but listening. Not asking, but recognizing. The real prayer is not "give me," but "thank you." It is. This is not passive. It requires courage, because silence strips away the illusion of distance. There is no one left to bargain, no one left to complain. Only presence remains. The tyranny of time. Separation also hides inside our relationship with time. Most people live trapped between memory and expectation. Life becomes a waiting room. One day, healing will come. One day, peace will arrive. One day, I will be enlightened. But spiritual truth cannot exist in the future. It exists only in the present. Perfection is not coming. It is. Think about the train track illusion again. From a distance, the rails appear to meet in the future. But step closer, and you see they never converge. In the same way, the promise of wholeness in the future will never arrive, because wholeness is here. When you see this, anxiety loses its grip. You no longer live under the tyranny of not yet. You no longer postpone peace. Life is not a rehearsal. It is already the stage. The collapse of systems. And here is where the teaching becomes truly subversive. If unity is real, then entire social systems lose their foundation. Religions built on mediation lose their role. Governments built on fear lose their currency. Economies built on scarcity lose their logic. Even the idea of progress loses its glamour. This doesn't mean hospitals close or societies collapse overnight, but it does mean their psychological power weakens. If you know you are already whole, you stop being manipulated by the promise of future completeness. If you see that God is not distant, you stop handing authority to those who claim to stand between you and the divine. This is the silent revolution, the discovery that separation never happened. Living from unity. But how does this awareness change daily life? What does it mean to live as if unity were already true? First, it changes how you see your body. Instead of a fragile machine destined for decay, it becomes a temporary form of something eternal. You may still care for it, but fear no longer dominates. Aging and illness no longer define your essence. Second, it changes your relationship with time. You stop waiting for tomorrow to deliver what is already present. Every moment becomes complete in itself. Work, rest, relationships all unfold without the anxiety of chasing after a better future. Third, it changes suffering. Pain may arise, but it is no longer absolute. It is recognized as appearance, not essence. You no longer feel like a victim. You witness life's movements without letting them imprison you. Finally, it changes relationships. Instead of seeking completion in others, you see each person as another form of the same presence. Love stops being a transaction and becomes recognition. Fear of losing someone weakens because what you loved was never separate in the first place. The practice of silence. So, what practice supports this? Only one: silence. Not silence as absence, but silence as recognition. Every authentic tradition eventually points here. Sit down, be still, let thoughts slow down. Notice what remains when words, identities, and stories fade. This is not about reaching a mystical state. It is about discovering what has never left. In the gap between thoughts, you find what is constant, and that constant is what you are. At first, the mind resists. Centuries of conditioning rise up. Thoughts scream, "This can't be it. There must be more." But if you stay, if you refuse to run back to noise, something happens. The illusion weakens. A subtle but undeniable presence emerges, and you realize you were never the seeker. You were always the sought. A practical step forward. Here is something you can do today. Find 10 minutes. Sit quietly. Close your eyes, and instead of trying to control thoughts, simply watch. Notice how thoughts come and go like clouds. Now ask, who is noticing? Don't rush to answer with words. Just stay with the awareness itself. The one watching is not separate from life. It is life. As you practice, daily life begins to change. When fear arises, you see it as thought. When desire pushes, you notice the space behind it. When pain appears, you refuse to grant it absolute power. Slowly, you begin to live from presence instead of illusion. This is the second movement of the infinite way. To see how the illusion was built, to expose its historical roots, to feel its weight in your own body and mind, and then to begin replacing it with recognition. You are not a human being trying to become divine. You are divine presence appearing as human. The mask may still cling, but the face is already shining through. And so the question lingers, if there are not two, if God and the individual are one, then what does it mean to pray? Let that question follow you, not as puzzle, but as doorway. Because prayer, in this vision, is no longer asking for what is missing. It is recognition of what cannot be absent. In the silence, you may begin to see perfection is not promised. It is already here. Crossing the veil. We have traced the illusion of separation, exposed its historical roots, and tasted what it means to live from unity. But understanding is not the same as living. To truly embody this truth, something more is required: the courage to cross the veil of perception. This veil is not physical. It is not guarded by priests or locked behind walls. It is woven out of thought, centuries of conditioning that whisper, "You are small, you are fragile, you are separate." Crossing it does not mean leaving the world. It means seeing the world differently. This is why meditation becomes central, not as a discipline that accumulates merit, but as the gentle art of letting illusion fall silent. The mind thrives on noise, on constant narration, judgments, memories, and fears. But between those movements, there is a stillness. That stillness is the doorway. It is the place where the veil becomes transparent. When you sit in silence, You may first encounter restlessness. The mind resists, insisting that nothing is happening. But if you remain, something subtle emerges. Thoughts lose authority. Awareness shines through. You begin to sense that what looks out through your eyes is not a separate self, but the same presence that animates all life. This is not theory, it is direct experience. And once experienced, even for a moment, it becomes impossible to completely forget. Who suffers? Now, let us return to the uncomfortable questions. If perfection is already present, who is it that suffers? If there is no separation, who is it that seeks God? The answer is disarming. The one who suffers is the illusion, the mask, the story of me built from childhood, reinforced by culture, and sustained by memory. This me feels real because it has been repeated so many times. But under silence, it reveals itself as a shadow, nothing more than thought sustained by belief. Does this mean suffering vanishes instantly? No. Pain may still appear. Loss may still be felt. But the difference is in perspective. Suffering is no longer treated as absolute. It is seen as appearance, not essence. You stop fighting shadows as if they were solid walls. This shift brings a quiet freedom. Life still moves with its joys and sorrows, but you are no longer its prisoner. You live in the world without being owned by it. Practical implications. Let's bring this closer to daily life. How does recognition of unity shape ordinary experiences? Take the body. Culture teaches that your body is your identity, fragile, aging, always at risk. This creates a lifetime of fear. But when you see the body as a temporary expression of eternal presence, fear softens. You still care for health, but you no longer bow to it as ultimate authority. Aging becomes change of form, not loss of essence. Take time. Most people spend life preparing for a future that never arrives. They live in not yet. But if wholeness is already present, the chase stops. You live more fully in each moment without postponing peace. Time still moves, but it no longer enslaves you. Take relationships. When you believe you are separate, you seek completion in others. Love becomes transaction, filled with fear of loss. But when you see others as expressions of the same presence, love shifts from need to recognition. You no longer grasp or cling. You meet others as mirrors of the same reality. Even work transforms. Instead of striving for identity or success, you act from fullness. Action becomes expression, not struggle. This doesn't mean passivity, it means freedom. You still build, create, and contribute, but without the anxiety of proving your worth. The end of seeking. Perhaps the most profound shift is in spiritual practice itself. For centuries, seekers were told, strive harder, meditate longer, accumulate virtue, and perhaps one day enlightenment will come. But what if enlightenment is not a goal, but the recognition of what already is? What if the journey you thought you were on never began because you never left home? This is what makes the infinite way so radical. It ends the chase. It dismantles the ego's favorite story, that it is on a heroic path toward greatness. The truth is more humbling and more liberating. You were never separate to begin with. The treasure you seek has always been buried in your own backyard. The ego resists this. It thrives on progress, on stories of achievement. To hear that there is nothing to achieve feels like death. And in a sense, it is, the death of the illusion. But what remains is not emptiness. What remains is life itself, shining without division. Living in the world without fear. Now, you may ask, if all is already perfect, what about injustice, poverty, or conflict? Does this teaching mean we ignore the world's problems? No, it means we see them differently. Problems are not denied, But they are not treated as absolute realities either. They are appearances, real in experience, but not in essence. This perspective changes how you act. Instead of fighting shadows with fear, you respond with clarity. Instead of being consumed by anger, you act from wholeness. When you recognize unity, compassion arises naturally. You see others not as strangers, but as yourself in another form. Helping them is not charity, it is recognition. Justice becomes less about revenge and more about restoring harmony. This is not withdrawal from the world. It is deeper participation, free from fear. The silent revolution. And here is the ultimate implication. Once enough people live from this recognition, entire systems lose their grip. Religions built on distance weaken. Economies built on scarcity falter. Politics built on fear loses control. The world begins to shift, not because laws were changed, but because perception changed. This is the true silent revolution. It does not march in the streets. It does not overthrow governments. It dissolves illusions, and once dissolved, they cannot rule you. A call to practice. So, what can you do? Take time each day to sit in silence, even 5 minutes. Close your eyes. Let thoughts come and go. Instead of trying to control them, simply notice the space in which they appear. That space is what you are. Throughout the day, when fear or lack arises, pause. Ask quietly, who is it that suffers right now? Stay with the awareness itself. The answer will not come in words. It will come in a soft recognition that the one who suffers is only a thought. When you pray, stop asking for what you think is missing. Instead, sit in gratitude for what already is. Let prayer become silence, not petition. When you love, love without clinging. Recognize the same presence in others. Let love be recognition, not transaction. These are not lofty ideals. They are practical steps to live from unity in ordinary life. Closing the circle. We began with the trick, the primordial error that convinced you that you are a separate human being chasing after a distant God. We saw how this illusion shaped history, culture, and even science. We discovered that perfection is not a future promise, but a present reality. We explored how healing, prayer, time, and relationships transform when unity is recognized. And now we arrive at the final recognition. Separation never existed. You are not becoming divine. You are divine appearing as human. The mask may fade, but the face has always been present. So let me leave you with this reflection. If you stop seeking, if you stop waiting, if you stop bargaining, what remains? Sit with that question. Let it cut through layers of belief. Let it dissolve the illusion of distance. And in the silence that follows, notice what cannot be lost. It is here. It is now. It is you. You have never been separate. You have never been just human. What breathes, what sees, what exists in this very moment is life itself, whole, indivisible, eternal. The journey is not to the future, but to the present, not outward, but inward. And when you see this clearly, the search ends. There are not two. There have never been two. There is only the one, appearing as you.